Lisa Ann wants to know, what was it like playing with Five Finger Death Punch? My name's Brady Hearn. I'm a drummer from York, Pennsylvania, and I'm going to tell my story about what it was like playing with Five Finger Death Punch and actually how it happened. It's a really cool story. So I'll try to sum this up as quick as possible. A couple years ago, I had seen that Five Finger Death Punch was coming to our hometown at the York State Fair. I had this grand old idea that I would try to get the band I was in at the time to open up the show. Let me say, I had to make a lot of noise to make that happen. So to put it all in a nutshell, I just had this gut feeling that they didn't have an opening band. I decided to hit the ground running, going social media, kind of leverage friends and family to kind of rally around the idea of to get my band at the time to open up this show. When I had made a post initially about it, I caused confusion and made everyone kind of think that we were kind of already on the bill. Just kind of made a discussion when in reality we were trying to get on the show, because at the time we were DIY and we didn't have, a manager, management, a label, none of that stuff, completely DIY. I did that for months on end. So I think the show was announced in March at the time, and that show would have happened in July. Pretty much leading up to a week before this show happened, I would kind of gas pedal on, make these posts on social media. You kind of got to the point where there was so much confusion. Their management had reached out to us and were like, hey, we're not aware of you opening this show. It's up to the fair. And then the fair was doing the same thing, but vice versa. So no one really knew who say it was to let us to open up this show, which was wild because it was like nobody knew who had to say yes. Kind of got to be in people's faces with something like that. And I think if I just kept pushing, you got to be a pain in the ass sometimes to get something that you want. I looked at it as like, what's the worst case, right? They can say no. At least I got an answer. If they say yes, great. I'd actually had this idea a week before the show, call Chris James, aka Hawaiian Chris James from 1057 The X. I had the idea of maybe going on the local show and discussing the idea of us trying to get on this show. Thought that would kind of put a little bit more pressure to get an answer out of somebody. The cool thing was Chris at the time was like, hey, I think it's a good idea, but let me get back to you in a few hours. I'll never forget the moment. 4:30 in the afternoon, stuffing my face with tacos. A message from Hawaiian Chris James sends me fist emojis. A couple minutes later, he started calling me on Facebook Messenger. I answered it. He's like, hey, Brady, this is Hawaiian Chris James. How you doing? Kind of just touching base with me. I'm like, oh, I'm great, man. Just kind of in the middle of a late lunch. And reality, I'm just stuffing my face with tacos, right? So he kind of cut to the chase. He's like, hey, listen, are you sitting down right now? I'll tell you what, I can be. I remember going outside on the porch of my parents' house and standing there. He's like, hey, I had spoken with Five Finger Death Punch's manager. I guess they knew each other because she's also in radio and obviously manages them. And she had kind of said, hey, I keep hearing all this noise about this band. She had asked Chris, like, what do you think? And Chris was like, well, we play them on the local show on Sundays. He's like, I think they're good for it. And that's when he proceeded to tell me that Jackie's like, all right, like if it's cool with you, pretty much it's cool with me. They got the gig. And he was like, hey man, congratulations, but you're opening up for Five Finger Death Punch. And I'll never forget it because I'm getting chills talking about it now. It was just such a moment of like, I just went pale white. I went completely white, because if you want it bad enough and you push hard enough, you really can make things like that happen. Chris did not have to do that. Like, me and my dad actually talk about it. My dad's like, I think Chris seen your passion and your drive to want to get on that show. And I think even he was curious, like, hey, can we get them on this show? Like, can they do it? I didn't ask him to do that, and he did it. And I'm forever grateful for that. That's how the show happened. I remember going to work that Monday morning, the phone blowing up, hearing it on the radio, them talking about putting my band on as the opening band for Five Finger Death Punch. First show I ever played, which was in a band with my dad at the time. 1057 The X, the local radio station, put on a show for local artists at the fair in a building. You can see it from the distance of the stage, like the main stage of the grandstands. I do want to put a picture here from that moment. Shout out to my friend Bob McCoy. He shot this photo. The moment of me looking over at the building that I played in when I was 16 for my first show. Hopefully that answers your question there. Maybe I elaborated too much, but thank you for asking.